Hey, what's up there, YouTubers? Adjumants and a job coming to you guys here today with another deck tech. So today we're going to be taking a look at a standard deck, and it is Bant Control. Now, for you guys that are unfamiliar with the color combination of Bant, it is green, white, and blue. And this deck focuses a little bit more on playing the later game and just trying to take everything your opponent's doing and make it like they're not doing anything at all, with either negating and countering their spells, or just board wiping them and making sure that they don't have any creatures. Ultimately, we just want to make sure our opponent's really just doing nothing, and then from there we can go and just win the game. So we're going to take a look at this deck, but before we get to that, if you guys have any suggestions for decks that you would like to see, please leave them down in the comments below, and remember to check out the playlist in the description below, where I have all the previous decks that I've covered on this channel. So the first thing that we are looking at here is the land base of the deck. So we have 26 lands, and they break down into 4 Hallowed Fountains. We have 4 Temple Gardens, and we also have 2 Overgrown Tombs. And the black that we have in the mana base is only to play off of Nephalia Drownyard. So we're not actually running any black spells, but we want to have the black mana to actually be able to activate Nephalia Drownyard as a alternate way to win the game. So 2 Overgrown Tombs, 4 Glacial Fortress, 4 Hinterland Harbor, 3 Sunpetal Grove, 1 single Drowned Catacomb for another source of black for us, 2 Nephalia Drownyard so we can mill out our opponent very slowly, but it's definitely an assured way because it's not like it's a spell that we're going to have to cast and hope that it resolves. And then we have 2 Cavern of Souls to assure that cards like Angel of Serenity or Thragtusk will actually resolve for us. So that is the land base that we have, 26 lands. Now taking a look at everything else, this is a very expensive deck, but myself, I tend to kind of go towards control more than playing any other type of deck, either mid-range or aggro. And personally, this is one of my favorite decks to run, but we have Thragtusk here as a playset. So Thragtusk lets us gain life, and whenever he leaves the battlefield, we get a 3/3. But on his own, he's a 5/3 for 5, making him a perfectly powerful creature, aside from his abilities. But being able to gain 5 life is very strong off of him. We have 2 Angel of Serenity. So Angel of Serenity is nice because whenever she hits the table, we are going to be able to exile either creatures from the battlefield or from graveyards. And we can do up to 3 of them, and essentially we can take back our own Thragtusks, or if we have another Angel, we can loop them, so that we can just keep on cycling them if our opponent destroys them and doesn't exile them. But ultimately, we can take back our Thragtusks and just be able to assure ourselves of not losing the game from life loss. But also, we can use it on our opponent's creatures as well if we're kind of in the safe zone where we know that there's not very many ways that can deal with Angel of Serenity. But the more common thing is just looping your own creatures and making sure that your creatures are just going to reoccur if they do get rid of Angel of Serenity. So from there, we have our Planeswalkers. So we have Garruk Primal Hunter, and we're using them as a 2-of in the deck. Garruk lets us either make 3/3s, or he lets us draw cards essentially with his +1 and his -3 ability, and that's what we're going to be using him here for most. From there, we have Jace Memory Adept. So Jace Memory Adept is a 2-of here as well, and the main thing with him is he's a win condition where we're able to just mill out your opponent with a 0 ability. Moving away from the creatures and the planeswalkers, we have all the rest of the spells with Sphinx's Revelation as a playset, so we get to gain X amount of life and draw X amount of cards. And it's X, 1 white and double blue, so it's not very hard to cast. And late game, it gains us back a lot of life, and it makes it seem like aggro just didn't do anything in the earlier turns. We have Farseek as a playset as well, so it lets us search for other lands. It lets us search for our other shock lands, more importantly. And it's also going to allow us to search for Overgrown Tomb if we already have Nephalia Drownyard out there. So it lets us kind of find like that little amount of mana that we need that's appropriate to actually be able to use Nephalia Drownyard. We have Azorius Charm as a 3-up, so Azorius Charm either lets us draw a card, it lets us bounce back a creature that's attacking or blocking, or it is going to give all of our creatures lifelink. So all three of them are fairly viable abilities that the Charm has. We also have 2 Detention Spheres, so it lets us exile anything non-Detention Sphere, any one card that we target, and it's going to remove all copies with that same name as long as Detention Sphere is on the battlefield. If it leaves, they get that permanent back, but it's basically an Oblivion Ring that has the clause where it can't get rid of other Detention Spheres, but at the same time it removes all copies of tokens or multiple copies if your opponent has, like, I don't know, 2 Thundermaw Hellkites or something like that, something ridiculous. Detention Sphere is definitely really good. It gets rid of Planeswalkers as well. We have 1 Elixir of Immortality, which helps us through the longer game ones, like control versus control, because we're able to shuffle our graveyard into our library, so we can assure ourselves that we're not going to just mill ourselves out, or our opponent will mill us out. We can also gain 5 life off of the elixir, and it shuffles itself into our own library, which is definitely good. We have a playset of Supreme Verdict, so it can't be countered. Destroy all creatures for 4 mana. Appropriate against pretty much any aggro-based deck. But the more appropriate one against zombies would be Terminus, because it doesn't actually destroy them, it just puts them onto the bottom of their owner's library. So it has a miracle cost for 1 white, which is pretty optimal if we're able to draw into it, but it has a hard cast of 6 mana, which isn't way too bad. But 3 Terminus in the build, and then last but not least, we have 3 Dissipates for counter spells. So counters a spell and also exiles it for 1 generic and double blue. So 3 dispels, and that's the main board that we have here for Bant control. Now we're going to take a look at the sideboard options that we have. So we have 1 Ghost Quarter to be able to get rid of other people's Cavern of Souls and assure that we have a way to actually counter their spells if at all possible. We have 1 Sundering Growth. So Sundering Growth is going to let us get rid of other Detention Spheres, also Key Runes if they are applicable, and Oblivion Rings, Detention Spheres, like I said, and anything that falls under the category under annoying artifacts or enchantments. So we have our way of getting rid of those, and also we can populate, which can be relevant with either the tokens that Garruk Relentless is going to be making, or if we get a token, a 3/3 off of Thragtusk, so we can populate it. But the biggest thing is that it's essentially just the same thing as Naturalize, except we have the ability to populate if the situation is present for us. Negate as a playset in the sideboard, and some people like to run Dispel in the sideboard, but I'm just more particular about using Negate just because it hits more things. It's just non-creature spells that it's going to be able to counter, so Planeswalkers and any other big things aren't really going to be able to go through, instead of just instants that the spell is going to counter. So I have a playset of Negate for the control matchup and also the mid-range matchups that run a lot of non-creature spells. I also have 2 Loxodon Smiters in the sideboard, and I like this up against control as well, because if you're able to resolve it early game, especially if you're able to drop it turn 3, it puts a lot of pressure on your opponent, and it forces them to actually act on getting rid of it and use the mana and use a spell to get rid of it. And it's definitely very awkward if they're going to use a Supreme Verdict or something just to get rid of 1 creature, but he puts pressure on them because he is uncounterable, and if for some reason he happens to be forced out of your hand by discarding him by an opponent's spell or ability, you do get to put him onto the battlefield, so that's good in that sense. But Loxodon Smiter puts pressure on your opponent up against the control matchup just because he can't be countered, and they have to find a way to deal with him, because bashing in for 4 is going to make a pretty big difference. We also have Centaur Healer in the side as a 2-of as well. So Centaur Healer is nice up against anything that aggro is trying to do. Sometimes we need just a little bit more life, even though we already have the Thragtusk and the Sphinx's Revelation as well. But he lets us gain 3 life, and he's still a solid-bodied creature, so we have 2 of them in the side whenever it's appropriate. Also, two Selesnya Charms, so this is an instant speed way of getting rid of big things that are 5 power or greater. We can also make a 2/2 Knight with Vigilance or give a creature +2/+2 and Trample. The most relevant thing, and the reason why I have it in the sideboard, is just getting rid of creatures with power 5 or greater, so stuff like Thundermaw, Hellkite, other Angel of Serenities. That's the big thing that I want to hit into with Selesnya Charm. And then the last card is Rest in Peace, so with 3 of for Rest in Peace. So up against other control matchups where they could potentially be running Elixir of Immortality and just cycling up their deck, their graveyard into their deck, we have Rest in Peace for that. But the more widespread thing that it just kind of shuts down is Reanimator, so they can't reanimate their things. So 3 Rest in Peace just to be able to trump Reanimator in any shenanigans that they could try to pull off. So that is the main board and sideboard for Bant control. So the entire deck list is down below where you guys can check it out, and be sure to check it out and give it a little look-see there. And remember to like, favorite, and subscribe if you guys enjoyed this video. But until next time, have a wonderful, fun-filled Magic the Gathering day.